Raise your hand if you like birthday parties. I mean, who doesn't, right? I mean, particularly, I saw all of the kids' hands go up. If you're a kid, you love birthday parties, especially if you are the guest of honor. I mean, friends come bearing gifts. There's ice cream and cake. You get to run wild. It doesn't get any better than that. I mean, blowing out the birthday candles is an annual rite of passage in our country. Although the older I get and the more candles I see, the less excited I am. And as I think back, I guess I had a really sad childhood. I did get invited to a lot of birthday parties. And being born in February and living in snow-filled regions, I didn't have a lot of birthday parties. I think I can remember one. But there is one birthday party I remember. It wasn't my own. I was invited to it, and I was excited beyond measure. The birthday was in October. I think it was near the end of the month, and of course it was a costume party. So I got to wear my Frankenstein Halloween costume. Now, remember, it's the kind that you just you slip on, and this was before flame retardant, so you get close to your parents' cigarette and had the plastic mask, you couldn't breathe, and you couldn't see around. It was awesome. And I remember dressing up, and I remember my mom pulling into the driveway and dropping me off as I walked to the front door by myself. Now, I was 5 or 6, and then she left. I had to have thought something was up because I rang the doorbell and they opened the door and I was the only child in a costume because it was not a costume party. My mom just thought it was because it was, October. I'm still scarred by that experience. Now, for parents, birthday parties can often be stressful and full of drama because we want everything to be perfect, but of course, something's going to happen and go wrong. There's a family, they decided to throw their 8-year-old daughter a surprise birthday party, and when everyone yelled surprised, she burst into tears, and through her tears, she said that surprise parties hurt her heart. One family hired a clown to entertain a bunch of 5-year-olds only to discover that half the kids were terrified by clowns and screamed and burst into tears. My favorite is, at one party, a child showed up with a stomach bug. And of course, the child threw up in the middle of the ball pit and on the cake and on the presents. And as a bonus, everyone got to go home with their very own stomach bug. I'm sure it was exciting. And no doubt these families still tell these stories and, like me, are still scarred by the experiences. But none of these compare to what has to be the worst birthday party in the history of all birthday parties. Now, in the parties I described, parents and little ones may have lost their minds or their lunches, but no one lost their head. That took place at the ultimate birthday party that was thrown by Herod Antipas. And we hear about this story of Herod Antipas and his birthday party. It was written down by Mark, one of the followers of Jesus, and this is the story that Mark tells. You can follow along. King Herod, or Herod of Antipas, heard of the miracles, for Jesus' name had become known. Some were saying John the Baptist has been raised from the dead, and for this reason these powers are at work in him. But others said, it is Elijah, and others said, it is a prophet like one of the prophets of old. But when Herod heard of it, he said, John, whom I beheaded, has been raised. For Herod himself had sent men who arrested John, bound him, and put him in prison on account of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because Herod had married her. For John had been telling Herod, it is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife. And Herodias had a grudge against John and wanted to kill him. But she could not, for Herod feared John, knowing that he was a righteous and holy man, and he protected him. When he heard him, he was greatly perplexed, and yet he liked to listen to him. But an opportunity came when Herod, on his birthday, gave a banquet for his courtiers and officers and for the leaders of Galilee. When his daughter Herodias came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his guests, and the king said to the girl, "Ask me for whatever you wish, and I will give it." And he solemnly swore to her, "Whatever you ask, I will give you, even half of my kingdom." She went out and said to her mother, "What should I ask for?" Her mother replied, "The head of John the Baptizer." Immediately she rushed back to the king and requested, "I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter." The king was deeply grieved, yet out of regard for his oaths and for the guests, he did not want to refuse her. Immediately the king sent a soldier of the guard with orders to bring John's head. He went and beheaded him in the prison, brought his head on a platter, and gave it to the girl. Then the girl gave it to her mother. When John's disciples heard about it, they came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. Now, the life of Herod Antipas kind of sounds like an episode from Jerry Springer. Try to follow along. So here is Herod. It's a different Herod than the one that was in power when Jesus was born, but related to that Herod. Herod was initially married to the daughter of a king. And so Herod went to visit his half-brother Philip. And while he was visiting Philip, he fell in love with Philip's wife, whose name was Herodias. Now, try to follow along. Herodias was the granddaughter of King Herod, who was Herod Antipas's father. So in other words, Herodias is Herod's niece. You with me so far? Okay. Now, Herod Antipas was a Jew. He fell in love with his niece and married her, and being married to your niece according to the law was considered incest and a sin. So now add to this whole debauchery, Herod throws a birthday party. Herodias' daughter Salome danced for her stepfather. Now, a word about this dancing, it wasn't clogging. Let's just say if she was to do this dance today, a pole would be involved. So after watching his stepdaughter, or was it his niece or his grandniece or everyone wrapped into one, after he watched her dance naked, Herod makes an oath to give her whatever she wants, even if it's up to half of his kingdom. Men. So the time comes for her to request what she wants, and she couldn't figure it out, so she went to her mother, Herodias, and says, "What should I ask for?" Herodias, who hates John, says, "I know what. Ask for John's head on a silver platter." And so Herod agrees and gives her the most unusual gift. Now, on the face of it, this is a very strange story. I mean, who says the Bible isn't interesting? Pole dancing and beheadings. It doesn't get any better than that. That is some birthday party. I mean, in this story, Jesus is mentioned, but he never says a word, and actually, he isn't even actually present in the story. They just refer to Jesus. But the question that comes to my mind is, why does Mark even tell this story? I mean, why is it worth remembering over 2,000 years later? I mean, when you look at Mark's whole gospel, he doesn't even mention Jesus' birth in his entire gospel. He doesn't spend much time on the resurrection, just one chapter. But here we get an extended section about Herod and John the Baptist and Herod's birthday party and dancing relatives. I mean, Mark's gospel is so short and to the point, but we get intricate details of Herod's marital situation and his birthday party, and it just leaves me wondering why. I think Mark includes this because in this story, John did what most couldn't or wouldn't do. He spoke truth to power. After Herod married his niece Herodias, John the Baptist was the only person to point out that what Herod was doing was wrong. I mean, had John stuck to baptisms or had he stuck to harsh pronouncements about the Pharisees, he would have been okay. But John landed in prison because he had the nerve to question the morality of Herod. And this judgment so angered Herodias that she at first asked her husband to kill John, but Herod was afraid of John and liked John that he couldn't do it. He protected John by putting him into prison. So I really believe Mark included this account to serve as a reminder that everything has a cost associated with it. As Sherry said, everything has a consequence, both good and bad. Everything has a cost associated to it, including each and every choice we make. Some of our choices are no-brainers, and there's absolutely no cost or ill consequence attached to it, but many of the choices we make, however, come at a significant cost to ourselves and to others. And responses to this reality tend to fall and fluctuate between two extremes. Either we plunge forward without any regard to the collateral damage, or we are stymied into inaction, fearing about all the what-ifs we could think about. So often we sacrifice what is right for what is easy. We ignore what is best for what is safest. We disregard what we believe for what is accepted. We forego the difficult road for the easy road, and then we rationalize our decision. I can't be honest because of what others might do or what others might say. I can't tell the truth because it might cost me something. I can't do the right thing because it might be the end of me. So how do we follow God through danger? In other words, as I asked this morning, how do we do the right thing even if it's hard? Now, I don't know where you are on your Christian journey. I don't know if you're skeptical about Christianity, or if you're just getting started, or if you're all in. But regardless of where you find yourself, you are confronted with hard choices. Each of us is challenged at least once a day, maybe more, to do the right thing, even if it's hard. So if you remember nothing else this morning, I just want to share with you some suggestions on how you might be able to do the right thing. So when confronted with those decisions, with those choices, the first we really should do is just take a step back and evaluate the situation. Just take a look at the entire landscape. Rationally think things through. Compare your current situation, your current predicament with past experiences, and ask yourself, when else have I had to do the right thing? And what worked? What didn't work? Now, I begin by asking myself, is this a hill that I'm willing to die on? In other words, is whatever I'm faced with so important that it's got to be dealt with immediately in spite of the difficulty and potential problems that result? And then I also use a process that I learned that's called discernment by nausea. What is that? So when I am contemplating my choices and my options, I think through both of them. Inevitably, one option seems easy and I feel good about it, and one option makes my stomach turn and I get nervous and concerned and worried. I feel nauseous. That's usually the right thing to do. When I feel nauseous, that's what I should do, because anyone can do the easy thing. Also consider the other individuals who are involved. Doing the right thing isn't just about you. Ask yourself, how will this benefit others? How will it hurt others? Will the situation get better, Will my relationships improve or will they worsen? What makes what I'm doing the right thing? And the next step is to stay calm. Keep your emotions in check, but don't try to control or hold them back, and pay attention to any physical reactions you get. That's the whole discernment by nausea, paying attention to those physical reactions, but refrain from acting on impulse. Because our first reaction may not always be the best reaction. And the best thing I have found to do is talk to someone. Get their insight, get their opinion, bounce your ideas off of them. You should have at least one trusted friend in your life to whom you can tell anything and who will respond honestly. And finally, when trying to do the right thing, even when it's hard, maintain reputations. Carry out whatever you do in a manner that appropriately represents you and others. I mean, ask yourself, will this decision go against my moral compass? Who will this decision affect? And am I making too big a deal out of all of this? Make sure that whatever you decide is not going to hurt the reputation of another person. And don't ignore the advice you've been given. You may feel like you're doing the right thing, but listen to what others say. I mean, for me, it finally boils down to what John Wesley calls the simple rules of discipleship. These are kind of the modern version. John Wesley says when making a decision, do good. Is the decision that I am going to do good. But also do no harm. Is the choice I'm going to make going to cause harm to myself or to someone else? But finally, whatever you do, stay in love with God. And I find it so interesting that Mark spends more ink on this story than just about any other story in his gospel. And the story looms large because Mark wants us to recognize that following Jesus can be costly. Giving our allegiance to Him can put us at odds with the political and social forces that seem to control and govern our world. Speaking the truth often results in being ignored or being pushed aside. John told Herod and Herodias the truth, even at a birthday party. He was the only one around Herod who called Herod's marriage for what it was. And Herod reacted the way the powerful always react. Put them aside, or say to them, you stick with your spiritual things, keep out of my private or my personal or my political matters. I mean, both John the Baptist and Jesus did the right things even when it was hard, and it cost them everything. They spoke the truth to power, and they both willingly suffered the consequences. Philosopher Aristotle defined an immoral person by saying, an immoral person is a person with no friends, because only friends care enough about us to tell us the truth other people help us avoid. We all need those kinds of friends in our lives. And we all need to be those kind of friends for others. Let us pray.